For the first part of this lab, you're going to collect 100 dice roll numbers. In the second part, you're going to roll a can and determine the time it takes to travel some distance. Here you can see my 2 columns of data for this lab. Using Excel, one can convert these numbers into a histogram. I have placed in the folder for this lab a video on how to get Excel to do this, but I will also demonstrate it here. If I choose this column of data and I want to create a histogram of it using Excel, I go to Insert, and then I go to this drop-down menu, Insert Statistics Chart. Specifically, I choose Histogram, and Excel creates one. This begins to look similar to the one I already created. To make it match up better, I need to have my bin widths match those bin widths of the one I created earlier. Excel will create bin widths automatically based on the data because it's trying to be helpful, but sometimes it's not as helpful as you would like. So if you click on the bins row of numbers, you have a box open up around your bin numbers. Click on the plus sign here and go to Axes and then More Axes options. You get a gray box, and you can see it's set up for automatic. But what you really want is bin width. So choose bin width. You're asked to create a histogram with a bin width of 5. So I back this up, type in 5, click somewhere outside the box, and the new bin width is applied to the histogram. Now it's starting to look pretty much like the one I created earlier. One of the differences is that I have labeled my chart, and I've also added axes labels. This is done using the Axis Titles option here. You can click on the generic name and type in what the axis represents, such as dice rolls, or bins of dice rolls, or spread of 5 dice rolls, or some other descriptive name. There's nothing official, just something to let you know and I know what it represents on this axis. The vertical axis is usually frequency, so just type frequency in there. If you click on the generic chart name, it opens up so that you can use a more appropriate name for this chart, say histogram of 5 bin range of dice rolls, or something like that. You can see 61 to 65 for the first bin. This is a range of 5. The others created are also a range of 5. This histogram is now complete. Once the histogram is completed, it must be copied into the Word document. What you do is to go to the last question in the Word document, and then after that question, do Insert Page, so that you get a nice clean blank page. I'm going to pretend that this is that clean page. If I were to take my graph and put it in there, it would only be this big, the exact same size as it is in Excel. What you want to do is to make sure that in Excel you make it an appropriate size. I have found by practice and process of elimination that if I stretch the graph horizontally to cover about 12 cells to the right, so in this case that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then starting somewhere near the top, I come down to the mid-50s, like 53 or 55 or something like that in terms of cells down. All the wording that is in my graphs, the titles, the axis labels, the numbers, all proportionally grow with the graph. When I think I have got it ready, all I have to do is copy this, and then when I come over to my blank Word document, I can paste it. If you look, you will see that it pretty much has 1-inch margins all the way around. It probably could have been a little bit longer, but we're close enough. If you get yours to look this close, then I'm not going to split hairs about the fact that maybe it should have been 1 or more cells longer. But if you give me a small graph, like the one originally created in Excel, then there are points lost for an inappropriately displayed graph. The other way you could do this is to put that small graph in here and stretch it out. But what that does in a Word document is to take the wording in your graph and stretch it out and distort it. This makes it less clear to read. If you do all your stretching in Excel first, then everything is preserved. It will come over when you copy it exactly the way you want it to look. According to the general directions in creating these lab write-ups, all graphs need to fill a page, and there is 1 graph per page. When it is time to copy over the rest of the graphs, I make sure I am at the bottom of the page of the first graph, hit the enter sign, and now I've got a brand new blank page. I can prepare my second graph the same way as I did the first, making sure the axes are appropriately labeled and the graph has the appropriate title, stretched out appropriately here in Excel, and then copy and paste it here in this new blank page. In this lab, there are 3 graphs, so we would repeat this process a third time. So that is how you can copy graphs created in Excel into your Word document as part of the write-up that you have to submit. You are also told to do some calculations. In almost all the labs, you'll be doing some sort of calculation. Space needs to be made to show those calculations. If they are not too involved, it may be simple enough to type them on the blank page separate from the graphs, questions, and data tables. They can appear before the graphs on their own page or pages, or they can appear after, but they must be on their own page or pages. If they are more involved, you can do those calculations by hand. You could then photograph the page or pages using your camera, save it to your computer or whatever device you're going to upload from. Then you can use the feature called Insert and then Pictures to go find it. Each page that you created by hand and took a photograph of should have its own page in the write-up. So, as an example, I have a new blank page here. Here's a picture, and in this case, I took a picture of my mean, standard deviation, and probable error for both the dice rolls and the rolling can data. The original picture is a bit small. I can stretch it a bit to fill the page horizontally. If I stretch it vertically, this shows you what I meant about stretching causing distortion. So once the picture is big enough to read, just leave it alone. So if you take a picture of a page or pages of calculations, you can do the same thing. 1 page of calculations per page in the write-up. In this lab, you're told you can either use the functions of Excel to do these calculations or you can do them by hand. If you do them by hand, then the picture that you put in this spot is going to be a picture of your hand-worked calculations. You do not have to do the actual calculations by hand. You can use a calculator to do it. But what you do show are the steps you would take the equations through to complete the calculations if you actually were doing them by hand. You put the original equation in variable form, then you've got the equation with data in it, and then you have your answer. And you would do this for each of the equations you're asked to complete a calculation with: the mean, the standard deviation, the probable error. Once you have laid them out, take a picture of what you have written and import it into your Word document just like I did with my picture. If you do the calculations using functions in Excel, then this is what you're looking for. Now you can put underneath here calculations done using Excel functions or something like that. This is all about communication. You want to communicate with me as clearly as possible what you did. Think about me as if I were your boss and you're writing a report. I have told you that I have some things I want in that report. Your job is to figure out how to do it and make it clear. Any extra information you put explaining these pictures or these graphs is helpful. So proper labels and proper titles for the graphs, additional wording if necessary on where these calculations came from for the calculations page, any of that is perfectly fine and should be done. One warning about pictures. A lot of your cameras on your phones may be set up for high resolution imagery, which means you might be producing a file that is on the order of a megabyte or more in size. Blackboard has a limit on how big a file can be accepted. If you start dumping megabyte images into your lab report, then it's going to probably reject your upload. I will therefore not have something to grade. You're going to be sending me a note saying you cannot see your submission. If it is the deadline when you're trying to do this, I'm afraid there will not be something to grade, which is not a good thing since I do not accept late work. What you need to do before this happens is to go into your camera and reduce the resolution so that you are creating images that are roughly 100K or so. Now when you import that image or those images, you're not making a megabyte lab write-up. If you're doing the calculations for this lab or future labs using Excel functions, you can put the information into some sort of table like I showed for my calculation results. In some cases, you may be able to copy and paste the table into your Word document. Otherwise, bring it in as a picture. Whether you put it before the graphs or after the graphs is not important, but all pages of graphs and calculations must appear after the questions. Here is the lab write-up. When you get down here, you have answered your last question, then you can just simply do a page break or just use your enter button, get yourself a clean page, and that is where you stick your first graph, or that's where you'll stick your calculations page picture. And then you will have, in this case, 4 different blank pages in which you will have put 3 graphs and your calculation results. You're welcome to trim down the lab write-up to just those items that are going to be graded. I demonstrated what such a reduced write-up should look like in one of the example labs found on the page, Overview of Lab Assignments. You could start here and kill off the procedure. You need to have your data tables. You could get rid of the analysis section. After your data tables could be the completed questions, in this case 1, 2, 3, and 4. After that would be the pages containing each of your graphs and your calculation results. Put your name on it where it says name, and that cleans up completely and leaves only the part which is graded. So if you want to clean it up, you're welcome to do so. So you have seen how to create a graph, or in this case a histogram using Excel, how to stretch the graph and make it the size to fill a single blank page in a Word document, and how to copy and paste that graph into your Word document. We have covered how to clean up the Word document and reduce it down to those things that will be checked for grading. One last thing. The instructions for creating these write-ups explicitly say that it must be a Word document. If you submit your write-up as a PDF, I may not be able to access the data if there is something incorrect that I need to check. When it comes to grading, I have Excel spreadsheets set up for each of these labs that I can put your data into if something does not look correct, either with the graphs or with the calculations. It takes some manipulating to extract data from a PDF if it is even possible, and I'm not typing your data into my Excel spreadsheets to see if I can spot something that may have gone wrong. I will simply give the report a 0 grade. So do not create PDF files out of the Word documents. Leave them as a Word document.